to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome, everybody. It looks like we have a small group here tonight, but we do have a quorum, just in case we have to take any action, which I don't think we do. Minutes. Did everybody have a chance to look at the minutes? And any comments, edits, questions? Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
And second, and all in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. Reports. Oh, did we lose Tammy? Gonna be hard to get her. Okay. Maybe we could start with the Board of Commissioners. Commissioner Fari?
Yeah, thank you. I don't have too much to report. I did go to the Wheels of Wayne. It was a beautiful day, very well done. Other than that, rock on. It's a great summer, a lot of activities. So if you're at home and you are looking for fun things to do, go on the website. And you can also apply for the Parks and Rec newsletter, and there's always something to do. That's it.
Great. But we still have Radnor Township School Board. We have to take that off. And Shade Tree and other reports. Tammy? Tammy? We've started. And we are ready for you. No, it's okay. Everything okay? Ready to go? Okay. Ready for your report, Tammy.
Oh, I feel so honored you're waiting for my report.
Well, of course.
Wow. See, I can talk really long.
We're on the
Steve
edge of
knows.
our seats here,
Steve
Tammy.
knows that when I've got the floor, he's got to maybe sit down. I don't know if you want to stand, Steve. So we trade the crown back and forth, he and I. Well, thank you. So I'll do a quick recap on some of the things that have gone on in April and early May. First and foremost, I'll talk a little bit about some of the events that we did in April. They all were postponed, of course, because of rain. We had a very rainy late April, so I'll start with Arbor Day. Arbor Day ended up being postponed, obviously, to last weekend. We had great success. We were over at Radnor Nature Park. We planted 8 trees. Radnor Conservancy, of course, helped lead the charge once again, so they're on probably about 10 years now of making contributions to the township for the Arbor Day program. They actually interfaced with Stoneleigh as well as McNulty's Nursery to get trees donated. So we had those trees come from them. So we want to give a thank you not only to the Conservancy, of course, to those 2 organizations as well. And it was a great little event. It was small. We don't always get a big group that comes out for Arbor Day, but it's a good opportunity for the kids to come out and get their hands dirty and help us plant trees. And Gretchen Grobel, who's the current executive director at over at the Conservancy, who I know is stepping down, she led the way and helped educate the kids on the proper planting techniques, as well as members of our Public Works Department who were there. So it was a lot of fun for them. We actually had 2 scout groups that joined us. There was a Cub Pack from 284, and there was a Daisy Troop who are affiliated with Radnor Elementary that came out, so they got to get their hands dirty and help us, fill in a lot of the areas to plant the trees. And they got to see the tree diapers for the first time, which is really cool. I know that's a real fun concept for everybody to see, and obviously helps with the watering with all of the trees over a longer period of time when Public Works doesn't have an opportunity to get out there and do that. So I want to thank all of them. Also want to thank Howard Holden. He is the grandfather of Arbor Day. He's responsible for getting the first Shade Tree Commission underway, as well as the shade tree-based ordinances that we have in Radnor, and we've been so lucky to have him come out to a lot of our Arbor Day ceremonies, and once again, he definitely blessed us with his presence in coming out there at this year's 31st celebration. And then, of course, Kayla Karras, who is our Bureau of Forestry forester, came as well to present us with our Tree City USA Award. So same weekend, Sunday, Wheels of Wayne, great success. Wheels of Wayne is in its 9th year. Amazingly, hard to believe that it's been so long. It's been a blink, and here we are. But once again, another great event on North Wayne Avenue and West Avenue. I want to thank all the businesses for their participation, the organizations, the sponsors. The Wayne Business Association gets involved and supports us and helps advocate for the event and spread the word. So they help us with a lot of participation and the communication with the business owners. So it was really a great day. It was beautiful. We had at least 3,000 people come through during the day, and a lot of great cars. So, and we had everything from the Conestoga wagon of 1810 to a 2023 Corvette Stingray 70th anniversary edition, which was like a one of 6 metallic caffeine color that came and joined us. So every year we get lots of really unique cars, and those were 2 real unique ones. And then, of course, the Best in Show vehicle was a 1953 Packard Caribbean with a very Caribbean-styled blue that was Best in Show. And it was actually another one-of-a-kind car with a very low amount that were made. So exciting day, lots of fun trophies and awards. Want to thank our sponsors, of course. David Otto has been a firm sponsor of us for many, many years. Rymel Motors, new business here in town, joined us for the first time. Lots of other new sponsors and businesses, of course, with Cozen O'Connor and Grim Bean Thatcher. They put in a lot of contributions towards the event, so we definitely want to thank them as well. And Farmers Insurance out of Bryn Mawr, Justin Pradle, has been a firm supporter of the event as well. We also had a pulled pork contest and a pizza contest, so I know a lot of folks, including our commissioner that's with us here tonight, had an opportunity to be a judge. So hopefully he had a good time doing that and enjoying the pulled pork and pizza samples. So Cornerstone was this year's pulled pork, best pulled pork of Wayne, and Teresa's was this year's best pizza of Wayne. So 2 great events that happened. Along with a lot of other great things with our trout derby that we had, our orienteering program. I know we talked about those last month, so I'm going to kick the floor over to Steve here in a quick minute. I just want to give an announcement on a couple upcoming events with the Radnor Memorial Day Parade on Monday, May 29th. That's going to be happening. We're going to try and also that evening have a small dedication ceremony for the Enke Park Ballpark B lights that evening with a commemorative game and special games that they have arranged under the lights. We have the another 9th year event with the Great American Backyard Campout coming up on Saturday, June 3rd. And then we also have the Bishop Richard Allen Historic Panel dedication at the park there on Sunday, June 25th. So I'll make sure the board gets the advertisements and all the details on that. We have web pages, of course, set up for a lot of those great events. And again, just another busy month with lots of programs and activities going on. So I'll take questions later if you'd like, and we'll let Steve take the floor for his presentation.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you,
Steve.
Tammy, and thanks to the Park Board for allowing me to come here tonight. Ian, could you put me on the big screen? Thank you. So tonight, I'm here to talk to the Park Board about a project that we're hoping to do. It's the South Devon Area Flood Reduction Project, and what it does is it takes place, it takes place at the West Wayne Preserve and the Friends of the Radnor Trail Park. So, this is the West Wayne Preserve, and this is Fort over here, just to give a little overview. So the goals of the project. The Board of Commissioners has placed a very high priority on stormwater management, especially flood reduction projects. So this isn't a pipe replacement or a smaller project. This is a flood reduction project. And the goal is to reduce flooding along South Devon Avenue, also some of the unnamed tributary to Darby Creek, reduce flooding at the West Wayne Underpass by the vet, create wetland regeneration, increase habitat value. There is contaminated soil on the site. I'll get into that in a minute. And we'll talk about the trees. I've been to a shade tree. Create a dominant canopy with a multi-layer understory and shrub layer for the West Wayne Preserve. So what we're talking about, it's a sizable project. This is a multi-million-dollar project. So this is the attenuation area. Our consultant, Melior Design, has determined that the 10-year, 1-hour frequency event is the one that causes the most damage in Radnor. This is the event where we had, Wayne flooding. So we get flooding in several areas outside of this, but this is the most damaging, and this is what they designed for. So this purple, it's purple up there. This purple area is South Devon Avenue. In one of these events, starting about at the trail bridge and heading towards the park, South Devon Avenue will flood over a foot or more, to the point when a car drives down, it's actually flooding people's garages that are on the low side. I've seen folks with sandbags up. The other area, this is the unnamed tributary to Darby Creek. These folks also experience flooding in these events, and that's what this project is designed to address in that 10-year, 1-hour event. So this project has been years in the making. The first approval we got was our Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Army Corps of Engineers joint permit. That was a 2.5-year process. We did receive Shade Tree Commission approval. I'm here before the Park and Recreation Board to hopefully seek your approval tonight. If that occurs, the next step would be to be at the Board of Commissioners on the 22nd of May requesting to receive sealed bids for this project. That's just the process. So our process is the board gives us permission to bid the project, we bid it, and then we go back to them to award it. This project is funded through the Stormwater Fund. There was a bond, it's a bond to be floated, so it is a Stormwater Fund project. The project will be constructed in 2 phases, and I'll get into the details. I just wanted to give you an overview. The idea is to complete the West Wayne Preserve portion of the project so that we can get the trees planted that fall for better longevity. Once that's complete, we would move over to the Friends of the Radnor Trail portion. So what are we doing? The West Wayne Preserve will provide detention, stormwater runoff prior to being conveyed. There's actually a pipe that goes under the trail that takes water into Friends of the Radnor Trail Park. So the first part of the project is to create an area here, and I'll show you a little better later. This would actually, the area of the West Wayne Preserve would be changed into a lower drainage area, and it'll be planted with specific trees, shrubs, and grasses to accommodate that. So runoff from Conestoga Road and above goes in there. Some of it is detained for a certain amount of time. Eventually, we'll go through the pipe to another subsurface system in the Friends of the Radnor Trail Park. This middle picture is an example of the subsurface system. You would never see it. You'll see some manholes that'll be flush with the ground, but that's it. And there's another portion of this. In Friends of the Radnor Trail Park, there's a stone parking lot, which gets pretty messy, gets rutted up, has to be fixed all the time. What we're proposing to do is make that a porous paving parking lot. So this is a big overview. So this is the West Wayne Preserve. To the left here, page left, is South Devon. Top of page is Conestoga Road. This red dashed line represents the limit of disturbance, basically where this project will take place. I can't really do too much in here because this is designated wetlands, and that was part of that whole permitting process. Down below, this is Friends of the Radnor Trail Park. And I'm sorry, these are the actual prints, so it's not super clear, but we'll talk a little bit more in detail. These red lines show where would we be working, which is the parking lot and, for lack of a better term, the dog area. This is a picture. So the tree removal is large. There's a lot of trees to be removed. So this is that same limit of disturbance area, just not in red. All these little dots are actually trees that are tagged. So I had our arborists go through and physically tag every tree, document the condition, the size, genus, species of the tree. similar to down here in Friends of the Radnor Trail. So this is just, and I won't get too deep into it, but we'll talk about this one statement on the side here. So as you look at West Wayne Preserve, there's trees there, right? They're not healthy. The township arborist, who is, he is a consulting arborist. He does not make money from tree removal or tree planting. His job, and for us, is risk management and the evaluation of trees. So he has no, excuse me, skin in the game if trees are removed, because he doesn't do that. So I quoted him, "It is of my professional opinion that the subject trees within this inventory are predominantly below average in health, and the longevity ratio is below average. The newly proposed landscape will provide diversity, structure, longevity, and a seasonal interest." So right now we have relatively few species, largely that are in decline, that do not create a healthy forest. It may look, people may think so, but it is not. And when we're done, if this project goes through, we're talking a six-figure planting program, which will create what he said. So when it's installed and as it matures, we will have the, the basis for a true forest. So the tree removal. I'll go right to the crux of it. All those trees in here, all these little, they're actually tree tag numbers, total 406 trees to be removed. And again, we did go through Shade Tree. They did approve this plan. Wow. So we have it broken down in two ways: Friends of the Radnor Trail and West Wayne Preserve. There's a total of 50 trees to be removed from Friends of the Radnor Trail, none of which are heritage trees. The majority are the 6 to 18 inch. If we move up to, or move down to the West Wayne Preserve, 279 trees within the 6 to 18 inch, 19 to 29 in the, 65 in the 19 to 29 inch, and there are 12 heritage trees. So the total trees to be removed are 406. Fair/healthy trees are 60. Poor is 346. So the way our ordinance states, we're required to plant anybody, like I am before you tonight, not as a staffer, but as an applicant, if you will. So any applicant that would come before the Shade Tree Commission, the poor trees, there's no compensatory tree required because they're in decline. The healthy trees, yes. So we'll go on to the next part. So the compensatory trees required are 115. We're going to provide 130, of which 106 are large canopy. So when we say large canopy, the standard replacement tree per the ordinance is a 2.5 inch caliper tree. That's what we do. That's that program we do every year. Those are those trees. Large canopy trees are considerably bigger. They have a 4 inch plus diameter, right? So they're much bigger trees, better chance of longevity. So we went heavy on that. So this is the compensatory tree schedule, which is only part of what we're putting in there. This was designed by a registered landscape architect with Meliora and also worked on by our township arborist. So as you can see, I'll use the common name: hackberry, river birch, sweet bay magnolia, sweet gum, black tupelo, swamp white oak, willow oak, and bald cypress. If you've ever seen bald cypress, they're really cool trees. So there's 106. They're the large canopy trees. This is a little better shot of what's going on. So we're going to be planting 130 bald and burlap trees. So these aren't just small trees. We're also going to plant 95 bald and burlap shrubs. So they're sizable shrubs. This is part of the understory that's going to be created. Forest, wetland container, and bare root trees and shrubs, 1,411. Live stakes, 852. And bioswale plugs, over 7,000. So a live stake is, our Shade Tree Commission does a live stake program where they get a grant and they provide them. So a live stake is really, it looks like a stick, but it's alive, right? So we're going from live stakes all the way up to large canopy trees. This is to get the diversity and the varying sizes, so as this site matures, we have a healthy site. And as John had noted, which will give seasonal view, so it's not just going to be beautiful in the spring and summer, there's something to look at in the fall and winter. So the total of bald and burlap trees, bald and burlap shrubs, container bare root trees is 1,636 that would be proposed for the project. And that's this. So all of this is the various trees, the shrubs, the plugs, the live stakes. So what we showed you was in that area of disturbance that everything goes, and in its place goes all this. Similarly, in Friends of the Radnor Trail Park, the majority of trees, and I'm going to go to another picture here. Maybe I can show it a little better. If you're familiar with the park, which I know you folks are, so part of the plan is to address the flooding on West Wayne Avenue. So we're going to put some storm sewer inlets on West Wayne. That goes to a swale off the parking lot. There's a swale behind that parking lot, in between the parking lot and the trail. That needs to be cleared. And if you can see my cursor, do you see these little dots? These are actually tagged trees. And if you look at this line, this is the tree canopy that comes out over towards the dog area. So this is the entire area where our system will go, that underground system. And what we're giving you is what we feel is the maximum number of trees to be removed. We do have tree replacement for both parks. I consider them two different entities, West Wayne Preserve and Friends of the Radnor Trail Park. Tammy Cohen has asked us to put a fence in around the whole area down there, which we will do at her request. That's not a problem. And actually, literally today, and I wrote this down so I don't forget, so if you go way back to this one slide, the arborist said, where is he? Bear with me again, I apologize. I know this in my head, it's just a matter of getting it up to here. The subject site exhibits a degrading urban structure and canopy, and then we get down to the deer cause a lot of problems in that part. So we were talking today with our consultant about how do we address that. Do we literally have little cages around a couple thousand plants? Probably not the best thing. So we're actually looking at putting up an 8-foot deer fence that would surround the West Wayne Preserve. That would be there for a period of years till the trees got to a point of maturity that the deer don't want to eat them. So I didn't get, I'm going to look at my watch here. It could be as long as 10 years, and the deer fence isn't cheap. It's about $10 a foot. There has to be gates so we can go in and maintain it. So that's another question. You might say, wow, who's going to maintain this? Because honestly, it's a big job, and it wouldn't be fair to put that on our public works folks. So as part of the contract, we're going to have a 3-year maintenance period that has to be done. And what that does is, so those plugs and the smaller whips, when they're growing, sometimes it's very hard to discern them from species that you don't want there, right? So the idea is to have a company come in and maintain this for 3 years at periods throughout the year, so these things can get established, and then it's easier to see what you want to keep. So let me move up ahead again. So again, what will happen in Friends of the Radnor Trail, this is what the parking lot will look like. It will no longer be a rutted stone loose parking lot. It'll have porous paving. Where we did porous paving in another park was Garrett Hill. I call it Rosemont Park. That's what it was when I was a kid. Clem McCrone Park. That path that goes all the way around is actually porous paving, and it works really well. Works really well. So some additional information. This project is $3.2 million plus. Seeing today's bidding climate, I think when it's all said and done, so when we add in a contingency and we add in our inspections, it's well over a $4 million project, probably pushing $4.5 million. The township has received a grant for $480,000 for this project. We've just applied for a grant for an additional $500,000, and I got to thank Tammy Cohen. She worked on that grant for us, like actually wording the grant. This is, I noted before, due to the magnitude of the landscaping, we're going to bring in a company to address that. And I don't know if this is a fact that most folks know, but the West Wayne Preserve was formerly the Levin Tract, and it was purchased by the township for stormwater management. That never, I've been here 12 years, and I think we're going back 20 years on that. So we've come full circle and actually are proposing to use it for what it was purchased for. So the goal is, yes, stormwater management, as well as a aesthetically pleasing, functioning bio area with the various trees, shrubs, and plugs. Some of the benefits of the project other than stormwater management. Well, first of all, if you look at West Wayne Preserve closely, there's big mounds, and actually they've been there so long, there's trees growing in them. And believe it or not, they're the healthier trees. That's contaminated soil, contaminated with arsenic and, if I remember correctly, molybdenum. So somebody years ago dumped this soil there. As part of our project, we do soil testing, and we're going to have to pay somebody to remove this. You know, we needed to quantify these amounts. That was another part of the 2.5-year joint permit process, right, getting that process down. So aside from stormwater, we're getting rid of contaminated soil on township property. The professionally designed landscape plan approved by the township arborists, it's going to increase habitat value. Again, create a dominant canopy with a multi-layer understory and shrub layer, and provide a more aesthetically pleasing view of the preserve from the Radnor Trail and Conestoga Road. Mind you, it will be very, very different, right? You're used to driving by and you see all these trees. They're not as big, and it will look different. Some benefits to the Friends of the Radnor Trail parking lot and the park itself. So the stone parking lot gets rutted. I know when I was Director of Public Works, I'd have to send guys over to constantly try to fill the ruts in. By paving it, it becomes a much more accessible parking lot. So if you have a physical disability, it is much easier to traverse the parking lot to get to the park once it's paved. So it is not plowed now because we don't plow the stone park. We don't do dip mark because it's a stone lot. Once it's paved, we will be able to plow that. So you'll have a little better access in those winter months. And the project incorporates the use of green infrastructure. So the township, we're practicing what we preach. We tell people that we want to do this. We tell contractors and developers to do this. Well, we're doing it too. So I'm here tonight in front of the Parks and Recreation Board to get your approval or a recommendation of approval to move forward. And then if you have any questions, I'll gladly go back through the slideshow or.
Well, I'll go last. Do you guys have questions?
I do. When you're talking about West Wayne, you're talking right there under the bridge of the trail?
Yes, so you know how it floods right under the bridge?
Under the bridge, yeah.
So there's two things. We did a project on West Wayne Avenue where we replaced all the sidewalk coming down.
Right.
And as part of that, I did crosswalks to get you into to safely get you into Friends of the Radnor Trail Park. So you can access the park from West Wayne as well as Highland safely now. And look, our consultant, I said, look, we have a problem with this flooding out down here. So their idea is to place inlets a little bit south on West Wayne Avenue to catch that runoff before it gets under the bridge and take it into our park to one of the two systems, either the swale in the back, which will then go into our other system, or to the porous paving area.
Okay. And I can't think of the second one I have for you, but yeah, I was wondering when you were saying West Wayne, I was like, what? And then it finally hit me, the bridge there.
Yeah, that's not good.
And then on, oh, I'm sorry, Conestoga Road, I guess there's flooding on if you're going from Conestoga out towards Lancaster, you're talking on the left side there?
So if you want to look at, so page left is South Devon. top of page is Conestoga, way up here off page is Lancaster Avenue.
Right.
So it's not to address flooding on Conestoga, it's to take runoff from Conestoga, which helps flood South Devon, amongst other areas, get it into the West Wayne Preserve so we can manage it. So this, if you've ever been here in a really bad storm, and this is one of the things I do, literally water will pour out of the West Wayne Preserve onto South Devon Avenue. It's incredible the amount of water. And we get runoff coming down Conestoga. So it's not a project to address anything, and I'm not really aware of any flooding in this area on Conestoga Road, is to catch the runoff that's coming from Conestoga and put it into there.
Okay, now I got it.
Go ahead, Claire.
Okay. I know that our friends on Shade Tree have vetted this out really specifically, so I won't ask too many questions about that. However, after being on Shade Tree over the many years, can you help us picture a couple things? First of all, do we know that the management is going to be effective, the water management?
So we've hired a consultant that does this for a living all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And based on their calculations and what they've provided to us, it's going to work.
Okay.
So I can't give you any more than that, right? We
I
have to
mean,
put
that-
faith in
that
our
works,
consultant.
That works. So they've done some calculations on
Oh,
the
right,
actual
yes.
flood management.
So we actually did we had a town hall several years ago. That was the genesis for this project.
Yeah, I was there.
Right?
I remember that. And that park, that West Wayne Preserve, is filled with vines. It is really in a bad shape to begin with. However, I'm trying to picture, and maybe you can help us picture what this will look like. If you go in and take down all those trees and all those shrubs to get to that next place, it is going to be a hugely bare corner.
So there will be a couple stages. So the very first stage, whatever contractor gets awarded this, they're going to go in and remove all the trees.
Yeah.
All at once. You know, it might take a few weeks.
Yep.
So right at that point, there's nothing.
Yep.
They're going to pull all the stumps, they're going to haul out the contaminated soil, and then they're going to grade that to the grades provided by our consultant to do some impoundment of water. Following that, bear with me. After that, and hopefully in the fall, that's our goal, that's where the 1,636 trees come in. Trees, shrubs, whips. So
So does the planning take place like you do the canopy tree first, then
the idea would be everything goes in the fall.
Okay.
Now, that's the best laid plans, right? That's what we'd like to do because the fall planting is great. If that did not occur, it would be a spring planting. And there's a deadline. When we did the TAP trail, we have a deadline of like May 18th. You can plant up to May 18th, then we don't let you plant until the following mid-September.
would there be a chance that if they didn't get the plant planted in the fall, that it would be a big bare?
Conceivably, yes. I mean, I don't want to be disingenuous. If for some reason something went wrong. Now, one thing, we are going to have a big sign up that says, this is the South Devon Area Flood Reduction Project. So the goal, and we'll have Molly Gallagher, our PIO, she'll put out information. We'll have other information. So we won't want people to think, oh my goodness, what's being built here?
Right.
Where'd the trees go? Is it homes? Is it this or that? No. So conceivably that could occur. And honestly, when they go in the fall, those trees will drop their leaves, right? So depending on what time of the fall it is, they will come with leaves or they will already be dropping their leaves. They'll still be healthy because I send our arborist to the nursery and he will approve each tree.
Okay, and then when all the trees are planted, let's say the fall, and we get a deer fence that goes all the way around, and no residents will go in, it's just the third-party maintenance.
Correct.
For 3 years. And presumably, in 3, 5, 6, 10 years, and we're getting sort of a healthy forest.
Right,
in
right.
that corner, which would be fantastic. will there ever be a time when that park becomes places for residents to?
So there's two schools of thought to that. So over the years, I've been on the public side, if you will, for about 20 years. And early on in my public career, we did a lot of wetland boardwalks. But what we found is that's not always the greatest thing for the wetlands, right? Even though they are boardwalks and they're posts going in, there's a disturbance to the wetlands when you do that. So conceivably in the future, could this be an educational opportunity? Absolutely. Could it be somewhat more opened up? But we'd have to take a look because it's amazing. As part of this project, one of the reasons it took 2.5 years, I had to get the actual wetlands areas surveyed and basically a deed created and provided that to the Army Corps of Engineers that said, we're not going to touch the wetlands, right? We're not going to touch it. So maybe there's a way we can bring people into the areas that are not wetlands to see what's going on. I would say that would be a potential future project, and it may be a potential future project that falls in line with the grant from an educational standpoint.
So are the wetlands designated by that center part?
I'll show you. This is a little slow.
And how big is that piece of property? Not the Friends of Radnor Trail, but the.
So West Wayne's several acres. So if you come down Conestoga Road, you have the Wayne IAC, you have some houses, you have a house here. This piece of property is actually the West Wayne Preserve that the township owns.
Yep.
Then you have 2 homes.
Yep.
And then you have all West Wayne Preserve. So the wetlands are really in this area, right? That's why our limit of disturbance is over here and here. We're really not allowed to do too much in this area, this specific area.
Where are the mounds of dirt that are?
So if you look here, it's where the piles, like see this?
Yep.
This contour line, that's one of the large piles. Some are smaller as you walk through. Actually, you can see them from the road. It's literally somebody just whatever, 20,
Maybe
30.
off the train bed at some?
Oh, no, this was, I would say have been illegal dumping or somebody dumping because it's literally looks like a dump truck backed up, dropped a pile of dirt. Now, over these decades, trees have grown on that dirt, but it's still contaminated. The contamination doesn't go away.
So then that's going to be depressed in there because they're not going to bring in new soil.
That soil gets carted out and taken to an appropriate facility that can take it. It's called controlled fill. So there are facilities, so there's different levels of contamination. There's the one where you literally, have to put it in 55-gallon drums and away it goes. That's not what this is. This would be hauled away in dump trucks to a controlled fill site that takes this type of soil.
I think that's my question. Thank you.
Welcome.
Do I turn my mic off? Yeah, I have a few as well. Steve, I probably could guess the answer to this already because this has been going on for a while, but neighbor awareness, how much input from the neighbors? Are they fully aware of this?
So this was the genesis of this was that town hall meeting we had. There's no direct effect. I mean, the only neighbors that will, I'm not going to say directly affected, that will be near the construction are these folks whose property juts into the preserve. So just like the North Wayne Tree Trench project, we sent letters to every affected property. So through Molly Gallagher, our public information officer, we'll do like a blitz of this is going to happen. And then we will either hand deliver or mail letters to the folks that are very close. And I would request from, Commissioner Abel that he could put it out in his newsletter or his contacts too. And then, of course, you're going to see the big sign.
But, okay, well, but this is all after, it sounds like that kind of notice is going to take place after the approval to do this project takes
Right.
place. How much awareness has there been or is there now
So
before this project
It's
takes
been
place?
going on for so long. It was noted in our meeting that this was the plan to do, right?
Okay.
The biggest impact, I think, to residents, so Obviously, the folks that live in, I'll say their lots push into West Wayne Preserve, that's the biggest impact, right? Because the machines are going to be running around, and we will go talk to them and let them know. The biggest impact is going to be for the park, which I'm going to give you the Friends of the Radnor Trail. I have it on the final slide. We're looking at about 180 days, 6 months. And that all depends on weather and how quickly we get started, right? So if they get done the West Wayne Preserve and weather, if it was a winter like last winter, they would just keep working right through. And then come springtime, it would be seeding, mulching, paving the parking lot. If we don't get a winter like last year, I anticipate it would be the bulk of the summer. And that's why I gave you 180 days. I want to try to cover ourselves. Whenever you're working in the ground, and that's what this project is all about, working in the ground, there are unforeseen items. We've done soil testing. We've done other testing to make sure that we can drain these things like the porous paving parking lot. But there can be unforeseen things. But we're thinking about a 6-month time period for the project.
How long will that access to the trail be closed? The whole 180 days, or will
The
you?
trail won't be closed.
So you know how you come in by Vic and Dean?
Oh, I'm sorry. So yes, that will be closed. So I looked at a few things. And let me back up. There will be like a 3-day period where the trail will be closed because they're going to have to replace a pipe underneath it. That's not a big deal. But the access through Vic and Dean's, the stone parking lot, and the dog area, really that's going to be their whole work area. So that whole thing will be out because they'll be staging. So that large area where the dogs are now, that is going to be a big excavation that's loaded with stone and pipe. And that stone and pipe will be staged probably on what is the parking lot now. And most likely they would work their way out.
That to me seems like it needs a lot of communication.
And we will.
And even beforehand, just what we're learning from our experiences with other parks, that is a well-used entrance and.
Oh, absolutely.
And dogs or no dogs, but a lot of meeting place. So there is the art center but that's not really public.
Right.
People park there. So are we prepared for that kind of overflow? And
So what we'll do, aside from letters to the immediate residents, right, hopefully through Commissioner Abel, our public information officer, we can, when we get closer to it, so as far as West Wayne Preserve, we will talk to those people, and that doesn't affect all the park patrons. But as we get a closer date on a schedule for Friends of the Radnor Trail, I can even post, professionally made signs in the park. Park will be closed as of, what I'll say, February 4th to this date. So that's, at least for the folks that they will know it, aside from the other items I noted. It's kind of similar to, if you remember when Clem-McCrone Park was in, that park was out for like 8-9 months, right? I mean, unfortunately, that was the case. When it was done, it was great, but there's no way out of doing that, right? The construction, now that was a park project with a stormwater component. This is a flood reduction project. So hopefully when we're done, you'll have a nice paved parking lot, you'll have a nice smooth area for the dogs with a fence, and you won't know that we were really there. So I know there are 2 different projects, but in similar fashion, it won't be access. It won't be safe for anybody.
Steve, in addition to the residences that sort of are right in West Wayne Preserve, how aware at this point are the neighbors, I would say the neighbors across the street, across Conestoga Road, that sort of look onto
So I will
West Wayne
tell
Preserve?
you,
How aware are they of the aesthetics and, they could be looking at a chain link fence for a couple of years or, kind of.
so the deer fence is kind of you can see through it, right? It's somewhat, and I literally just got an email of the deer fence right before this meeting. But that's neither here nor there. So yes, has there been a lag time since all this went through? Absolutely there has. So I think to your point, will a lot of folks be surprised? Yes, they will. Again, I don't want to be disingenuous and say, sure, everybody knows. It was 3 or 4 years ago. So what I can do is, I mean, it's very easy for us to send actual letters out because not everybody is going on the website. Not everybody is signed up for the alerts. Whoever's watching, I strongly suggest you do sign up for alerts, for not just for this, but for anything. So we can do a larger mail blitz, if you will, right? I can go down South Devon. I can do the houses on Conestoga, by Lantoga, by Doyle, and all that. And what I would do is direct them to a website spot where they can see what's going on. It's kind of hard in a letter to say, and honestly, it's very hard to describe, hey, there's going to be no trees, then there's going to be a bunch of trees, but I can show them the plan. And what I do is I create a project-specific email that we put in the letter and say, so this might be, South Devon flood reduction at radnor.org. And those emails come to me and Dennis Capella. So it's very specific. We put that in the letter. We put that on the website and whatever Molly puts out. And she puts out on information on all the social media platforms that we use, as well as our standard website.
Okay.
And don't forget, Tammy Cohen is great at getting the word out. So,
Claire, I'm sorry, Mary, when you're done, can I ask like 3 questions, or, I don't know, Howard, you want to go?
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Just 3 quick questions. Is this is being paid by the Stormwater Fund, correct?
Correct.
So the bond, or is this something separate?
Bond.
Okay, so this was the bond.
So if you remember, the project's roughly under 500,000 were paid out of cash.
Okay,
The larger ones, which this will be,
yeah.
is from the bond.
Okay, so this is so this
Right.
has been accounted for, and the money is there, and
And it's all stormwater fund, no general fund.
okay, because that would have been a large bite in the budget.
Oh, yeah. And this has been reflected
Bringing this
forever
up.
because we've been trying to get this
This was
done.
not in the facilities bond, so I just wanted to
No,
check
no.
that is. Okay, number 2 is, I know that you kind of don't want people walking there. It is kind of a natural habitat and preserve, but if it isn't, and I know you don't want the boardwalks and whatnot, is there an educational opportunity there?
There is, and I think what we're going to have to do.
Birds and
So
trees and-
we are creating what we hope to be is a better habitat for critters and everything else. I'm still not sold on the whole big fence thing. This is literally an 11th hour on that. But I also understand our consultant's thought of having, 1,000 plants with little tree cages around them, right? So we're going to have to work that out. And this will be before you, if we get this will be before you to further
maybe or maybe not, but
vet this out.
okay.
So I do think there's an educational opportunity, not to walk in the wetlands, but to go through the other portions of the park of West Wayne Preserve, which aren't wetlands. And I think it's a future grant opportunity to put something through there so that people can look at it.
So speaking about those critters, I know that on the other side of the trail you're looking at, I would like a tunnel that you see when you're driving up to the Poconos or the Adirondacks, where bear and deer and raccoon, they figure that stuff out, and they know that, so they don't get hit by cars. Is that we're going to have more animals there? Is that going to be more of a for a safety issue for pedestrians? I don't want them swerving, but B, no one likes to see a dead animal on the road. It's
So
upsetting.
the only excavation that will occur through the trail is the replacement of the pipe. But there is no intent to put a deer tunnel. I know exactly what you're talking about. And
I don't know if you can, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I don't know that it's necessary. We'll talk a little further with our consultants on that. The deer are everywhere. I don't know if blocking off a couple of acres is going to change
Sure.
anything.
I mean, it's also counterintuitive to send our sharpshooters out while we're,
Yeah.
Sorry, Howard.
Not part of this project at all.
All right, thanks. And then the other question I have is the trees that you take down. You're going to remove that fill that has the arsenic, I believe you said lithium in it. Is there any way, and I don't know the condition of those trees, if it is safe to mulch them and to kind of reuse and recycle those trees for mulch, A, you don't have the gasoline associated with moving it. B, it's kind of like a it's not a terrarium, or is that what they're called? Like a self-contained.
So our public
ecosystem.
works folks do create mulch, right? And they actually use that in some of the parks as mulch. This will be a lot. And my recommendation is we pay the contractor to take care of this, not muddy the waters with where it goes and how they do it. I would suggest let those experts, if you will, remove those trees. Whether some of these are going to be cut up and hauled away as logs, others, and depending on the size of the clearing contractor, others may be literally put through a chipper and ground right into a big tractor trailer to take it away. But my recommendation would be to let them handle that.
Okay, and the trees that are in there, the healthy, are you going to take down healthy trees that may be invasive? So I'm talking about, say, Norway, is that right? The Norway maple?
So I didn't get into the real detailed,
I'm just curious what the thinking is, like if it's a nice, healthy tree, but it's invasive or it's brittle, like, what is it, the buckeye? I think, what do I have outside my, a buckeye?
Yeah.
Do I have a buckeye? What do I have, a pear tree outside my house?
Pear trees are bad. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Crabs
sorry,
and
yeah.
pears are
But if it's healthy and it's invasive, do you keep it? And I don't know, like, do you keep a Norway maple, but you don't keep
So the
an Atlantis, or I don't know?
The decision on removing a tree has nothing to do with the species or health. It has to do with the fact that we need to create, bear with me. This is slow. So wherever we're working, at one point, a bulldozer is going to be grading this area to create that lowered area. So if it's in the limit of disturbance, it will be removed. We don't look at it and say, well, we're going to keep this one, we're not going to keep this one. They have to go because we need the ability to grade that acreage and create that. There are a lot of ash trees, and there are a lot of unhealthy trees. So like I said, it's 400 trees that are coming down, but only 60 require replacements. That gives you an idea of the health or lack thereof of the trees in that area.
So, I'm sorry, I thought it was 115 were coming down, you're replanting.
No, we're putting
130.
in, so let me go to the tree
Sorry,
table.
So it's 400 now, but you're adding an extra one, so it's 400 that come down, so instead of putting in 515, you're putting 530 in, am I correct?
Now, so let's go to this table. So 406 are slated to be removed. Of that 406, 60 are considered healthy and require replacements.
Okay,
346 do not require replacements based on our ordinance.
okay.
And then we're going to put in 115. It required is 115. We're putting in 130, of which 106 are large canopy. And then when you go here, this is really where it kind of explodes. 95 shrubs, the over 1,400 bare root trees and whips, live stakes, 800, and then the bioswale plugs aren't trees, but it's a huge amount of, thank you, plant material going back in.
And then you're hoping that it'll reseed and become just a forest?
No, we just want them to, it's not a reseeding, it's a matter of growing and getting healthy and getting
And the
established.
roots
So you have
absorb the
trees
water.
that are this large in diameter and trees that are this large in diameter. And as time moves forward, everything's getting bigger, everything's getting established. So the whips don't look like whips, they have leaves on them and things like that.
So, sorry, one more question, and I apologize. So how many trees are you taking down that are, say, less than a foot in diameter of those 400? I mean, are some of them just like scraggly little things?
So we follow the ordinance. So anything under 6 inches doesn't count as a tree for replacement, right? That's 6-inch diameter of breast height. 4.5 feet, 6 inches, or below 6 inches doesn't count in the tree count. So the first category in the ordinance is 6 to 18 inches. And that's where the total project, there's 325 coming down in that category. 69 in the 19 to 29, and 12 in the 30 plus. Go to the top table. That's the summary table.
So most of what you're taking down is 18 inches or less?
Is 6 to 18 inches.
Yes, 18, okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you. Steve, since I was going to ask about ash trees. Are we going to be taking any measures to make sure that ash trees, which may or may not be infected, are not chipped up and hauled somewhere and emerald ash borers?
So
It's
I had
all
to
over
talk
the
to our
place.
arborist. He literally walked the entire site and put up, 500 tags. That wasn't brought up as a concern, but I will look into that.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't want to be spreading it, so not that, I mean, these ash trees are probably goners anyway, but we certainly don't want to be in a position to accelerate the problem or exacerbate it. Any other questions, guys?
So what I can tell you from hearing, and I want to assure you, we will get the word out because it has been a long time, and folks will be surprised. You're absolutely right. So we'll do a physical letter campaign. I'll ask Tammy to put the word out on her site, Molly on hers, and I will ask Commissioner Abel to put things out on his end too.
I just have one quick question. Even when you do all this excavating and leveling out the land and all that, and then you put the trees back in, the soil's not going to come along at some later date or years down the road and start to settle, and then it just becomes...
No, we
I'm
don't
not gonna talk
anticipate
about
that. So in the West Wayne Preserve, a lot of that is cut. So what we mean is we're taking soil out. We're not
Right.
building in. At Friends of the Radnor Trail, you have this big, huge excavation filled with stone, pipe, and then that soil gets compacted as it goes in. There is a 1-year maintenance period on all this work. Well, the trees are different, but so if there was ever any kind of settlement, and we have inspectors on site during the job, there's soil compaction testing, so we do our best to try to avoid all that.
Yeah, that's what I thought, okay.
Steve, what do you need from us?
I would respectfully request a recommendation of approval to move forward with the project.
Board, are we ready to make an approval or not tonight? Howard, are you with us? Okay. Do we do this by motion, I guess? Okay, I will move that we approve or recommend that this project proceed. Anybody wants to second that motion?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for your approval. We will keep you abreast of everything through Tammy as the dominoes start to fall for the project.
Right. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
The pitchforks come out.
That's part of my job.
Tune in to the Monday Board of Commissioners meeting on the 22nd.
I don't know if this is relevant, but I feel that it's okay with that vote because of being vetted through Shade Tree. So
Yeah, that's a real consolation. Plus,
So
I think
I
I
want-
think
I-
you asked some very good questions, Claire, and yeah, certainly from a cost-benefit point of view, I'm okay with it. There will be questions. Okay. On to good old business. Odoricio Park improvements planning. This sounds like something for Tammy.
Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk a little bit about another one of our favorite topics, Odoricio Park. And I mean that with all sincerity. Very exciting project. So I'll try to be brief. Tonight's agenda item specifically reflects a discussion on the survey data that we've been collecting from members of the community. But what I want to do is I want to take it as an opportunity to trace some of the steps and recap the project, just to kind of go through some of the meetings that we've had and some of the discussions that we've had. So first, I just want to start out and talk a little bit about the park. It's a unique space. It has a very special way of being passive and active at the same time. So it's something that I notice when I'm there at the park. I've actually been there as a visiting team for baseball games, and have come from out of town with a group and a team, and everything I hear is all positive about the park. In fact, they love the rolling slopes and being able to sit at the top of the field there and look down at the baseball games. Something that can make you feel tranquil and connected to nature all at the same time while enjoying your child play baseball. So it's really a special circumstance, albeit we know that there's a lot of improvements that are needed throughout the park. But I wanted to point out its unique features. And just talk about that a little bit, because it really has a lot to offer, as everyone knows. So just a little bit of a recap on the timeline and how some of the meetings have unfolded over the last few years. There was a town hall meeting at the RTCA that goes back to May 2021, which was sort of an open meeting and discussion with the neighbors on various improvements, concerns that really had to do with the park, the neighborhood, really all of the Wayne area there and surrounding streets. So I know there were a lot of topics that were covered in that town hall going back to May 2021. Then as we started to have a lot of discussion on the direction on where the project would go, we had it as a new business item in February of 2022, so almost a year later. We ended up putting it on our agenda, and we started formal discussion and really invested some discussion and time on wanting to get these improvements done at the park and have open discussion with members of the community that would continue. So every meeting, we've had it as an agenda item since, just to give you some frame of reference. It's always been on our agenda as an item. We had a special meeting at the RTCA just a few months later after it debuted on our agenda in May. I think we had about 15 people in attendance, so not heavily attended, but we had a nice cross-section of folks that came out that shared their opinions. We had another special meeting in September of 2022 where we actually met at the park, so there was a group of us that were there. We had members of Radnor Wayne Little League, Wayne Legion, and some members of the community that came over. I think we had about 12 people in attendance, and had some great discussion actually in the park. It was a very nice meeting, and we talked about ideas. We met again at the RTCA just this past January. Unfortunately, I think we had 4 people in attendance, so it wasn't heavily attendance, and that's kind of what led us to the survey, because we didn't have heavy representation that night. Could have been just due to various factors, but we started the survey, which actually, I'm not sure if the timeline's correct, actually, because we started that survey in October of 2022. So October of 2022. So I'd have to talk about that a little bit more. I think maybe we talked at the September meeting and the May meeting about low attendance, because that survey's been out for a while. So I have to go back and check that a little bit. In any case, the survey has been out for a while, and here we are now in May, wanting to take a special look at that. So I also want to call out that there was a special meeting at the RTCA on April 27th to discuss the comp plan. And we had probably 40 people in attendance, but we did give out free pizza. So I think that's what we know, and a lesson learned moving forward with Odoriceo planning meetings, that we need to make sure we have food, which is all good. So this is just a little bit about what the horizon could look like. So, here we are now having a discussion on, looking at the survey. I think from here, looking at the survey, we want to start to consider what some of the goals and objectives for the project might be, and start to whittle through all of those great ideas that we've been hearing from the community. So, we hear some consistent ones, we hear some inconsistent ones. I think it's really starting to sift through that and come up with some project goals and objectives, very similar to what we did with Fenimore Woods. And then at some point, we would go to the Board of Commissioners. The next step would be to get authorization to develop a conceptual plan, which would include engaging an architect or an engineer in that process. Of course, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing right now where we've kind of cut out the need for that architect or engineer to manage a lot of the things that we're doing with the public meetings, the survey, the stuff that we're doing right now, which I think has been some really great cost-cutting measures. Again, we talked before about Clemacrone, where we didn't do a lot of that. We had our consultants manage through that, but I think what we've determined is that we can kind of take the bull by the horns there and get a lot of that work done ourselves, since there is a lot of time that goes into it. And then looking, on the horizon, I left May 2023 plus just as an open. Obviously, these dates will change for all of these steps. We would come back through the Parks and Recreation Board if we had authorization to go and start putting a plan together and engaging the architect. We'd start looking at plans, plan revisions. We probably will have some roundtable meetings where we'll actually get people at the table and really start to put the nuts and the bolts of the plan together. Ultimately, be back to the commissioners for authorization to go to design for a plan that would be designed, or components. So I don't want to rule out some of the work that we might be able to get done in-house. I think what we're learning from the Fenimore experience has been that there is some work we might be able to do on our own, some parts that we're going to need consultants for, and how do we piece that together. But ultimately, our Board of Commissioners would be reviewing a conceptual plan, giving some authorization. So these are all things we're gonna have to start to put some, I think, timelines to that are a little bit more hardy. So I just, again, have May 2023 in there plus as just a placeholder.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
So May 2023 is today.
Yep.
So you're saying that
Here and beyond.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Here and beyond. And that's probably some of the discussion we can have tonight if we want to look at putting a timeline together. I don't know if we want to put ourselves in a box of any sort. I think a lot of it's predicated on getting the community at the table. I think that's really important. I'm not sure how much representation to the project we have here tonight, but something that we're going to want to start to consider and get those folks to the table, or go to their table by, obviously having more meetings at the park and or at the RTCA to engage people. So this is a little bit of a timeline. When I say that, steps in what the timeline will have to define. In all reality, this is going to take us well beyond 2023. In fact, it's difficult for me right now to even envision a scenario where we might have an idea on project elements by the time we put our budget together, which really starts to happen in August, September, October, and then ultimately we end up approving township budget, usually in November. So I think it's a little bit of a tight timeline. It may be a little premature to consider that. That's the unfortunate reality and just all the steps in the process. So we'd be really looking probably more realistically into 2024, going through the process, engaging the consultant. And then as we would line up in late 2024 for the 2025 budget, starting to figure out how we're going to fund it, what the cost would be, et cetera, and trying to line that up into that preparation for that budget. So we're still a ways off, but as we've all experienced in the last several years, this time goes by very quickly as we're looking back on some projects that are almost a decade in the making. And just something else to keep in mind as we consider timeline, we do have a grant that we had obtained from the Delco Greenways. It's a planning grant, so it's specific to planning and design and development and feasibility, but it is good for about 3 years. So, and it's for $100,000, and the township has a match to it of $150,000. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the prospective funding here in a minute as well. But I did want to highlight that. So we know the age of Odorisio Park is 60 years, so it's been around for a long time. We know also that there's a lot of components of the park that have not seen renovations, like the comfort station for 30 plus years, like the playground for 26 years. So there's a lot of features of the park that are very well aged. But I don't want to discount some of the time and consideration that we've made over the years. So when I came into the role of director in 2010, the comfort station, the playground, the dugouts at the baseball field, there were a number of items that were in the capital plan. So I don't want to discount those not getting a recognition because they were in a capital plan. They were contemplated for many, many years. As we know, our capital plan and many projects have been pushed along throughout the years. We had a borrowing in 2016 for parks and infrastructure. I know Odoriceo was contemplated in that plan for improvements. Unfortunately, it ultimately was not funded, but I do want to recognize the time and discussion that did go into that. But some great things have happened. The basketball court was replaced in 2022. We did do some light level comfort station repairs this past year. There was painting, and there was some rehab and cleaning work that was done. Some of the fixtures and things like that were replaced. I know it's still not the most pleasant bathroom in the park system, but our public works team did make a great effort to try and fix that building up a little bit. Unfortunately, it does have its challenges and is kind of getting beyond repair. Playground repairs were made. We had a slide that was broken. We had a bubble screen that was broken. We got those replaced in 2021. They seem insignificant, but they were like a $10,000 repair, so they weren't cheap. We had bench replacements to all the benches that are up above the park there at the ball field. We had bleachers installed. That was something we understood that our sports folks were interested in. We had hearty discussion on a mountain bike proposal that took us the greater part of a year to get through. We had several tree plantings. We had the Rocco Odoriceo plaque dedication, which I realize since has been removed just because there's some controversy on that. So then we had the kiosk installed at the comfort station, the library. The boulders were reinstalled up around the basketball court area so that folks could look down on the baseball field. And then Radnor Wayne Little League, of course, right now, they are looking at fencing and field repairs that they're looking to fund. Ultimately, they're looking to fund dugouts. And as we know, there are batting cages, of course, that they put up seasonally. So we don't want to say the park hasn't gotten any attention. It's gotten some attention, just we realize there's definitely some bigger and better things that we have to get onto. So this is just an outline of what the project could include. Obviously, the aging infrastructure with the bathroom, the playground. As I mentioned, the playground is 26 years old. It's going to reach a point where we just can't make repairs to it anymore. It needs accessibility. It needs to have some inclusive play features. There are definite changes there. Looking at potential reconfiguration to the parking lots, the ingress, egress at West Wayne is very difficult. It's very confusing to get out of there. It's hard not to pull into the other lane as you come out and you make a right. So there's some corrections that need to be made there with the park ingress, egress. There's also park ingress, egress on the other side of the park at Church and Fairview that creates some limitations and some confusion. There's ADA connections and connectivity through the park that needs to be resolved and added. There's stormwater management. That's pretty significant through the park. I know the other day, a few weeks ago, actually, I was down there and I see there's significant erosion coming down off the field, off the hillsides rather, where there's erosion that's significant under the current steps that lead down to the baseball field. There's significant undercutting. A lot of that is going to have to be given some attention for stabilization to the hillside. There's tree root erosion to the beautiful trees that surround the park. We'll look at a couple pictures here in a minute of that. So there's a lot of needs that you kind of don't really see unless you really take some time to look at those. Tree plantings, landscaping, consistent with all of our projects where we want to make sure we're giving those time and attention and enhancement. And overall, just inclusive and accessible features for what our community desires that contribute, obviously, to physical, cognitive, emotional, social needs, inspire our youth to come out, be in the park, not in their bedrooms on their phones, and then some degree of promoting environmental responsibility, which we know this park can certainly do. I want to reflect back on the Park Impact Fund and the funding recently that took place last year at our April meeting, where the Parks Board passed the motion that I have up here, where we funded the Enke Park Playground rehabilitation. And I just want to call out that the additional part of that motion was to use the remaining funds, which was about $275,000 at the time. That may have grown a little bit since then, just given some development that's taken place in and around town. But about approximately $275,000 in that fund that this board motioned to be earmarked for design and implementation of the Odorosio Park project. So as we see, there's a commitment. There's a commitment by this board. There's a commitment by the residents. I know there's been a commitment by many of our commissioners. Recognize that this is a park space that needs some attention. So funding options, as we know right now, we're in good shape for planning and design. We have that Delco Greenways grant. We have the money to match it, sitting in the Park Impact Fund. And so that, even though that would require board authorization, we know that there is some funding in place to get a plan done. There might even be a little left over that would go towards some of the improvements, ultimately when it's funded, to defray those costs. There's additional grant applications that can be evaluated. As I had mentioned, Radnor Wayne Little League is looking to make improvements to the baseball field, and as well as Wayne Legion Baseball. So that's something where they have a commitment to do some of that, which are also important improvements to the park. And then obviously, we're going to have to decide, where some of the additional funding comes from. Is it another bond? Is it capital funds? But understanding the amount is going to be a big piece to that puzzle in terms of looking at ultimately what the plans are that we want to do in terms of the rehabilitation of the park. So there's a lot of pieces there to get through. These were just some pictures at the park, obviously, of what the basketball court did look like and what it looks like today. So definitely improvements there. And we'll talk a little bit about the park at the end of the meeting, because I want to just call your attention to an issue there that we've been dealing with. And these are just some of the pictures, obviously, from the park where we have some structures that, need work. So just a little bit of a recap. Here you can see some of that tree root erosion on the other side there, on the third base side. And then obviously the beauty of the park. So before we dive into the survey, I just wanted to talk about some of the other sort of, I'll call it considerations in tandem that are going along with this project. We know we need to survey the park. When I say survey, I mean understand the boundaries. So that's something that's going to be really important. Again, one of those items we can probably use the Park Impact Fund to fund. Some of that comes down to understanding ownership. So our legal review of the site does tell us that there is a portion of the site that's still owned by Radnor School District, which mostly comprises the baseball field. So we want to work through that, make sure we have proper understanding that that's the case. The park address, we know, is an issue of resolve that we need to work through. It currently directs everybody to 418 Fairview, which brings them all down Highland Avenue. In the main parking lot, obviously, on West Wayne Avenue. So something we definitely are going to need to work through. Park signage at Fairview, even though that's not the designated location, it would be good to create an identifier so folks don't get lost and then they're driving up and down even more on Highland Avenue, so that would be important. Creating people-centered streets and connectivity. Right now there's a lot of traffic flow, but creating that ability to move people on bikes, sidewalks, things like that. I know Steve just left, but we did talk about a plan with crosswalks from the Housing Authority where we believe we could bring a sidewalk across Fairview and into the park. So I think that gives us some positive aspect for that. I know that's something that we want to try and continue moving with concurrent, of course, to the project development. I think there's opportunity to enhance the trail access and then possibly trail access even behind the Highland homes. We know they back up to the trail. Not sure why they really never had a connection to the trail, but just definitely something for some consideration and discussion, and this sort of ties to the comp plan. And then obviously connecting to Maplewood, the Art Center on the other side is definitely part of the consideration. Again, I bring it up just because the comp plan is underway, so it's a great time to talk about this. Not something that'll be funded from this project directly for the park, but something that is to be considered as we design the park and consider changes potentially to the park. We did have a discussion at one of our meetings, I forget which one, about establishing a one-way in and a one-way out at Fairview to Church. That was a situation where we brought it before our staff traffic agenda in September and November of 2022. But we do need a resident to head that up and bring a petition to make that happen. So I know that's something that we really need to elevate. If that's something that folks really want to see, we are going to need to have that leadership to bring that forward so that we can, or maybe it's not something they want, but part of the discussion. And then again, I mentioned the comp plan and the development. So this was just a snapshot of the parcels. As you can see, in total, 25-acre park, owned 40%, as we see here, by Radnor School District, and then the different 60% by the Township, which includes the area where you have the, I'll call it the sort of informal parking lot above the third base line that leads into the playground, the comfort station, the basketball court, and then sort of what's like a flag shape that kind of comes over to where the woods, the wooded area is located. So that's just sort of like an overview of that wooded area from Google Earth. So I could grab a snapshot of that so you could see it's a pretty big area. This is where the sidewalk could potentially go. And then this is the one showing one way in, one way out that could create just a safer access. So if we ended up establishing that sidewalk access along Fairview, this might make the road a little safer to have a one-way in, one-way out. Again, a suggestion that was brought forward by residents that, you know, we wanted to try and see through. So now on to the survey. So unless anybody has any questions, I'm going to jump into that in a different file, which goes online, because that's where folks were accessing it. So this is just a snapshot of the survey of what folks saw front-facing. And we had a series of questions, asking them where they were from, how often they visit the park, for what purposes do you visit the park, how important do you think it is that the park undergoes improvements and the development of a new site plan, existing park features that you would like to see improved, and then ideas on those and descriptions. Select any new features that you would like to see. We based this around some of the ideas that came out of our discussions, so that's how these were all constructed. And then other, so people could tell us what they think, and then the age range of which the folks who completed the survey were, and then it's just sort of open, suggestions and feedback. So this is the feedback to date. We have 162 responses. This was a Google survey, so it's open. It's still out there today if anyone would like to jump in and fill it out. We can probably talk at some point about when we want to close it. So I'm just going to kind of go piece by piece here. So you see overwhelmingly 98% were Township residents. Interesting that we have some that weren't. But they might be some folks that are connected to the park or used to live in, near the park and just, maybe aren't in town currently. What part do you reside? We could see overwhelming people are in Wayne, which is great. I thought it was awesome to see that. How often do you visit the park? We could see occasionally was the number one reason why at 51. Seasonally, we have monthly, weekly, daily, annually, and then it just sort of goes down from there. Some people only come there when it snows. Obviously, they're gonna sled ride. So what purposes do you visit the park? We see appreciation for nature, passive exploration, a lot of informal basketball play, use of the amenities, playgrounds, other things like that, not uncommon. Again, kind of goes with the anecdotal observations that we make. Community events such as Odorissimo Music and Movie Night, which is coming up on July 8th. Organized sports programs, obviously. I'm surprised that one wasn't bigger, but it just must have been that a lot of folks just didn't fill that out who actually are within the sports organizations. But people are there for soccer, baseball, and some other structured programs. Obviously, sledding, another big one. And you can see the low percentages of the other areas from there. This is something, I'm not sure what family cow pickup means. I was wondering about that, but we can export the data and read it in a little bit more detail. And I can provide it to the board in a spreadsheet because I can take it out of here. I don't know. How important do you think it is that it undergoes improvements? This was an interesting one. Very important. 42%, important 27, somewhat important 17, and then 12% not important. Please select the existing park features you would like to see improved. Comfort station is a big one. I think we probably could have predicted that. Interestingly, the wooded and natural spaces and preservation, we'll see later, there's still a little bit of division on that with folks who would like to see trails, folks who would like to see it just remain the way it is, maybe with a little bit of just debris cleanup. So that's one I think that's going to definitely gauge some, we're going to have to gauge some more conversation potentially on. Site furnishings like seating and park benches and picnic tables, no doubt about that. We definitely, in the playground area, the comfort station area, can use lots of those things. So we've talked about that. The playground, landscaping, tree plantings, parking lots, park access, egress, park navigation, and pathways. Very consistent with a lot of what we've been talking about. We do have a contingency that thinks, nothing should be improved. And then you can see the list of things from there. And I'm not going to go through those, but, we have, pickleball, leashed dogs, dugouts, bike trails, softball, lots of interesting things. There was some comments about dogs. Not unsurprising. For the existing park features you'd like to see improved, renovated from the list, or from the list there, there's some feedback pieces. I could read through all those if you'd like. So I'm just gonna kind of scroll through them then. There's some references to some parks in some other areas that folks made. And again, this data can all be exported, and I can put this in a file and share it with the board, so you can take your time and go through it. And we obviously can make it available to the public as well once we, finalize everything. Somebody wants the basketball court redone. It might have just been, I don't know. I was thinking like a prior comment maybe before it was done, but I don't think that timeline would line up. Lots of great responses. So I'm just going to kind of buzz through those then, because there is a lot of stuff that's there. And I'll move on to the next topic. Select any new park features that you would like to see added. And then we noted some of the suggestions. So we saw, covered pavilion shelter, park benches, furnishings, playground space with expanded features, nature-based features, inclusive features. Again, not surprising. We do have our water feature there that's popped up. The splash pad that we talked about and we've heard about. Exercise stations was another one that came up. I know those are popular in a lot of parks. We did used to have one of those at Hartford Park, for those of you who may remember. and I think Wayne Elementary had one also when I started here. Pickleball courts, skateboard feature, bandshell amphitheater, beautification, landscaping, tree plantings. I think those go without question with any investment into the park. I think those have to have strong consideration. Community garden, environmental and educational features, memorial reflection space, dog walking park, pretty significant there. Outdoor games, bag toss, bocce. I know they make stuff like that for the outdoor elements. Navigation, walking paths, connectivity to the neighborhoods, parking, stormwater management, definitely important. No new features are needed. And then there's a lot of other items on down here where we got some input. With that, sidewalks, absolutely. Age range, looks like the majority were adults. Some youth, some teens. And then additional feedback was a lot of just, we got compliments, there were some suggestions. And again, another area where folks sort of reiterated a lot of their ideas that they had above. We still have some folks that are looking for mountain bike trails. And I think the thing to keep in mind is that it's a survey. It's, I'm sure not without flaw. But I think it's good information to have conversation. Keep it natural, keep it as is. There's an array in here. Again, I think it's consistent with some of the things we've heard through our other park discussions also, but then, walking paths, connectivity, environmental spaces, natural spaces. So lots of great information. So I will share that with the board. Make sure you get that. The other part of it is we were able to collect a lot more emails, which is good. I think that list is up to about 90 now. We have a couple of residents that volunteered to circulate this survey for us, so they've gotten out into the community. I actually equipped them with 2 iPads to do that with so that people could just fill it out on the spot. So they didn't have to, worry about if they didn't have connection. So those were cellular-based iPads that they were able to share with everyone and anyone that they run into. So I appreciate those residents for doing that. So I don't know if there's any questions or further discussion. I do think at some point we probably want to talk about next steps. If at this point I can provide the data, or if you want to give it time and close it and put a closing date on it and then provide the data, I'll leave that up to the board. But I think some of this information is probably ripe to start some conversations about objectives, some goals and objectives, and start to sift through those and then determine, when is a good time to have another engage, like a focused meeting with the Odorosio Park group and residents. Probably at the park and or the RTCA is good. And we'll provide pizza this time, so we'll get a better group out. We'll get a bigger group out.
I don't know, I don't want to impose any artificial, kind of pull it out of the sky deadlines on you. I'm comfortable being guided by what you think the appropriate timeline is. I mean, you're working with this stuff every day. I don't know if you guys feel the need to.
I'd like to see some of these ideas that's from the survey, and if we put a timeline, whatever, close it, but then to start to flesh out some priorities from the survey so that we can use that as a kind of a stepping stone for the next meeting with the community.
I mean, like distill some of the stuff
Yeah,
in the
distill
survey?
it maybe and say, this is what we learned from the survey, and here is what's kind of bubbling up as the priorities, sort of reverse engineering Fenimore way. Just so that this is, the community's spoken and we're starting to flesh out some of these priorities, and then we can further detail and hone those as the kind of next steps.
I mean, is there a way, the comfort station seems to be the overwhelming I mean.
And playground.
Yeah, and playground. I mean, is there any ways we can start moving those forward while the other things, I mean, like, are there, I don't know, not proposals to get, but drawings that can get started, or thoughts about what can be done with the comfort stations and the playground? I know you have, I mean, you probably could draw it up yourself, I know, because you've done so much of it.
Maybe.
But I mean, but with the playground, but the most notable thing, I mean, I'm over there a lot for my son's baseball schedule, and the comfort station comes up every time. I don't see how, I mean, there was a lot of great feedback. I don't see how we could move forward with this project without addressing the comfort station. So is there any reason to hold back on that or just get that moving forward?
Except location.
Yeah, so I was going to say, like, unlike Fenimore Woods, first of all, we're not dealing with as large of a space, so we sort of have a finite space, right, of what we know we're looking at. We know the baseball field's not going to change. So we're really, the only consideration I would give to that is if we would move it. Like, would we consider moving the comfort station to where that open surfaces where, we call it like another parking lot, but I think some of the discussions that we've had, we've learned that could be a usable space for an amenity for moving the comfort station over if we decided to do that. It doesn't mean we have to do that. Maybe it's in the right location of where it is right now. I would just say is if we're considering the addition of any amenities, or we're considering moving things in any way, that's where I think we would want to design it out. And certainly we could engage a designer that starts to give us ideas on that, to what that might look like. And, taking that whole area from where the comfort station currently is all the way up, to where you get to, the end of that parking lot and start to think about what that space might look like. The only concern I would have is, I will say, in adding amenities, is I think we need to understand first how that's contributing, if it's contributing to the hillside erosion, because I think that's a significant issue that we have to look at too as part of this. So it is comprehensive. So yes and no.
So you're saying with the addition of amenities, you're saying like pickleball course, amphitheater, things like that?
I think amphitheater probably is a little easier because that might end up being one that's down on the bottom part of the field. But something to give consideration to comprehensively, definitely. But
that's
if,
what you mean,
right,
in terms of adding
right.
amenities. I mean, I just think the anchor of this is going to be the comfort station, no matter what else is added. I mean, I just think we have to decide if it's going to be staying in the same place, expanded, moved. I mean, I think that's going to be the key to everything, and may decide some of the other things, whether they're feasible or not.
It seems like it would make sense to keep it in the same place, even if it was expanded with an overhang or pavilion component, seating component, with benches and picnic tables, only because that's where the utility currently is. So I would think there's some economy of scale to that. Plus, it also is sort of like central now, so
Right.
the basketball players can access it pretty quickly, and the playground folks can. So it kind of is in a good location now, it seems. But we're also not talking about moving at a significant different distance either if we did.
Right. Well, that's my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
I
Go ahead, Howard.
how can I say this? I would like to see it, we've got since, the survey's been out since when?
I think October of 2022.
Okay, and we've gotten 162, and that's what, 5 or 6 months there? I don't think we're going to get that much more, and I think we shouldn't just, in my opinion, just keep kicking the can down the road hoping that we're going to get more. I think we need to put some fire under this and get it done. I would like to see I would like to see a date come to where we close the survey. Tell them that we're getting ready to close the survey, and what would you like to do, and bring up your point. Start working on some of the hotter issues rather than prolong this thing down to 2025 and we're still like the end of this year, still waiting to see if we can get more things. I think we've got enough to get things started to sort of like put the fire under them and say, okay, community, this is where we are.
Right.
We've been doing this long enough now. Let's come together and make some decisions going forward.
I think the survey, keeping it open is fine, but I think you're only gonna get some more fringe responses, you know, I don't think we're gonna see anything radically different from what we're seeing right now, you know, whether in terms of amenities, and if they do, it's gonna be 1 or 2 people, it's gonna be on the smaller end of what they're proposing. I mean, how long you keep it open, I mean, I don't think that really matters so much as I think there's enough feedback there to start moving forward on the bigger items and start coming up with a concept.
Well, certainly we want to prioritize, and we want to make sure that, I mean, if we're going to do things in a piecemeal fashion, we don't want to proceed with one project because it's a priority, and then subsequent projects that are desirable are locked out because we did something in a certain location and now we can't do the next project. So we have to really think it through.
Right.
But I agree, we're probably getting close to that stage, since I think you're right. I mean, even if we get 50 more answers, they're probably going to be proportionally the same way they play out. Now, I doubt there are any more creative ideas out there, because they had quite a list of ideas of things that
It's
could be
not like
done.
something's gonna overtake the comfort station at this point, you know.
Or the playground.
Or the playground.
Right.
I have a question about the design. You mentioned we could engage design. Is there a path where we could engage some sort of like back of the napkin design? So no, I don't mean to be funny, but where we're not spending a ton of money, but we are getting some ideas down on paper. Is there a path for that? Even if it was somebody who donated it, or have we done that in the past?
Well, I mean, we probably have done it, you know, to a small degree. I'm not sure. We haven't done it in recent years, but I think we could sit down, you know, with our group and our residents and, you know, put together a big, giant overview of the park and just start drawing on it
Yeah.
with a Sharpie marker
That's exactly
or
what,
multiple.
just to kind of
Yes.
get our ideas
Yep.
going on where you might like to see things rather than paying a consultant to say,
Yes.
we think it should go like this.
And we can continue to vet that out. And then once we all feel comfortable with what we have, then we get a consultant to draw it out for us.
I like that.
Well, that's sort
and
of
there's-
Fenimore-ish, isn't it? I mean,
Sure.
Fenimore 2.0.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a way, there's also the option too is that, you know, sort of in the last leg of that, we could have a consultant join us just to give us a perspective.
Right.
But if we know that, I think a big decision to make is how do we want to change the comfort station? But I think what we heard, because we did hear feedback on that, was that, you know, a nice overhang, sort of like a la Emlyn Tunnel comfort station, maybe a little bit bigger, so that maybe, I think over there we have 2 picnic tables. We could do, you know, 4, 6, so folks could sit at the picnic tables and actually look down on the ball field. I know that was something that was discussed. Now that was under a scenario though of sliding it up. So I think that was what was discussed that night we were out there on site, was possibly moving it over to like above where the steps are, which, you know, I don't want to rule out any options, but it certainly isn't. It's still an option. But decide, like, how do we want to configure that? And then we can get an idea on the square footage of what a prefab might look like and just kind of put that on there as a placeholder. Playground, you know, what kind of features do we want to see? How do we want to expand it, move it? The playground's a very easy thing that we can put together, square footage-wise, especially if we're using the existing footprint. If we get into doing a water feature, if we get into doing a nature-based component of a commercial playground or a hybrid, or we're just going to do a nature-based playground, that's where some of those design elements are really going to have to flush out, and then sizing could change and fluctuate. But if, you know, we can rule out other features that we're either going to do or not do, I think that's also a part of the conversation. And that's where if we had that like round table meeting where, you know, we draw it up on, you know, an overview map, I think we can, that maybe is the next step. or have cutouts that we put down on that. We did that with Fenimore as well. We did magnets, and we moved stuff around and slid stuff around, so.
So when do you see us realistically doing that, Tammy?
So June meeting is going to be dedicated to Fenimore. So we're going to have a specialized roundtable meeting to Fenimore. I know we'll talk about that as the next item on our agenda, but that'll be a very focused meeting, June 8th. July, I don't know if that's something we want to engage in July, if folks are around. You know, we certainly sometimes run the risk in the summer meetings where we lose people because they're away. So I would probably worry about that. And then we don't meet in August, so that takes us back to September. And then at some point, we do want to readdress our dog conversation in a more specific setting.
Maybe we can earmark September and start collecting now with our email list. Let's close up the survey. This is just a suggestion. And then with the intention that we're going to meet as part of September is we're going to bring our ideas and.
Yeah, so bring your ideas too.
Yeah, yeah, and we're going to do magnets or a whiteboard meeting.
Yeah.
The only thing I would suggest is if we don't have a focus meeting in July, we could make that one also
Sure.
and do it again in September if we felt like we didn't get
Yeah.
the
Oh,
representation,
that's true.
just to keep it moving.
Yeah, because September seems so far away. I know
It
I know
does.
it's going to show up in 2 days, but
Yeah.
it sounds,
And I think
I hate to lose 2-3 months.
I think the stakeholders, if someone's not able to make it because of vacation, they'll find some
That could work.
their opinions across.
Okay, then.
So September, or July? And then September. And then we'll just leave the survey hang open for a while, maybe until July?
Yeah.
I think that leaving it open, yeah, you're gonna get your scragulars to come along too, but it's not gonna hurt anything, yeah,
No, I don't think it's not going to change anything.
yeah.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well then, I'll work and I'll get you the copy of the
Yeah.
detail, and then we'll come back in July. We'll have a little bit more of a structured game plan then, and we'll start communicating ahead of time with residents.
That sounds good.
And that's good because, actually, I don't have a calendar handy, but our July meeting, if anyone happens to have it, I'm kind of curious how it lines up with the July 8th event that we have. I
Oh.
think it's that week prior, which would be good. We can announce it there. Okay, yes. So we can announce that meeting at our July 8th Odorosio Park Music and Movie Night for whatever it's worth, to try and, spread the word that night, hand out cards, hand out save the dates, things like that at the event.
Sounds good. Sounds perfect. Okay. Next item is the capital budget and park impact fund project allocation update. Anything on that, Tammy?
The only update was I just kept that on the agenda because we were talking about the Park Impact Fund and the remaining amount of money that at this point the Parks Board has recommended for earmark for Odorosio Park. I know we're going to start budget planning shortly. Staff will start engaging in their 2024 budget planning come June, July. And I'll keep the board updated on capital projects and the list. I know at some point we'll want to take a look at that and anticipate that if we do have a capital plan, what some of those priority items might be within that. And of course, it very well may be is just that whatever dollars could or would be allocated there are just earmarked towards Odorosio or Fenimore, some of the active projects we know right now that are still without 100% being finalized.
Okay. Questions on that, guys? Fenimore, update.
The update on Fenimore is pretty consistent with last month, although what I want to make an update to is, just as I had mentioned here briefly, the June 8th meeting is going to be a focused roundtable meeting on Fenimore. And so just to take a small walk back in time, the March 27th Board of Commissioners meeting, we had looked at the stable rehabilitation proposal as well as the comprehensive plan proposals to move forward. Those were tabled. There were significant concerns over the costs of the consultants. for both parts of the project. And we tabled those items to take a step back and take a closer look at the project, which we have been doing, to look at creative ways that we could scale back costs. So more specifically, what we're going to do at the June 8th meeting is start to have a conversation about that, on how we can look at the stable in terms of its reconfiguration, particularly because that was such a high amount. That was that 1 million plus amount that was being projected that would be the cost for that rehab, on how we could cut those costs back, and what would that look like? How would that compare to the plan that had been brought forward versus what we could do to cut costs to establish the stable as a bathroom space in a more of a less civilized build-out. So we did have a preliminary meeting with Gannett Fleming, who are our consultants who did all of the original work there, and they've actually been invited to attend that June 8th meeting so that we could have those very specific discussions, and they can be very precise on where the areas are to where, you know, we can make those cuts and make those changes. So our Fenimore Woods Coalition Group, I know they're still engaged, and they have some suggestions and some ideas as well. So we want to sit down at the table with them and have that conversation, as well as all members of the public, because we will be taking a step back and just taking an overall little bit of a different look to the project. So evaluating some things that we might be able to get done with our public works staff, like demolition of the pavilion, establishing the concrete pad for the new pavilion, ADA, creating the pathways throughout the park. So some things that we might be able to pull out of the comprehensive plan from our consultants. There might be some pieces that they still will work on, but again, trying to get those costs down and overall just stick to the desire to have a minimalist approach to how we go about the renovations at the park. So save the date, Thursday, June 8th. I will be sending out an email to confirm with the group to make sure that that date is intact. Right now, we're just making sure that Gannett Fleming is available and going to be attending that meeting. And so as of right now, if there are any changes, we'll communicate those. But that's where we're moving.
Okay, good. Any comment, questions? Concerns about dogs in the Willows Park and Skunk Hollow trails. I know we're still taking any comment from folks in the township. I don't know that there's anybody in the audience here to talk about that. At some point soon, I really want to get some input from this board on, based on what we've heard so far, on ideas they might have for how to address the situation, creative ideas. I don't know if you guys saw, you probably didn't, because I sent it out about 90 minutes before the meeting tonight. I sent you all a listing of the relevant statutes or regulations, federal, state, county, and all the local townships on how they do or don't regulate dogs in their national parks or state parks or county and municipal parks, and also a chart that indicates which parks right now in Radnor Township do or don't allow dogs. I mean, there are a couple that have outright ban. In fact, most have outright bans. Really, only a few that allow dogs at all. And then, you know, what regulation governs when dogs are allowed. Right now, it's that under control notion. But anyway, it's just a handy reference. It doesn't really come up with any opinions or recommendations, but I just found it was useful to have it all there. Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I kind of pieced information. It was a lot of cutting and pasting. But Tammy, what did you have anything you wanted to add on dogs in Skunk Hollow?
The only thing I wanted to clarify from my presentation at the last meeting, and just make sure that folks, you know, realize that even though there's a portion of the trails that are the Skunk Hollow trails, it's really within the boundary of the Willows. So where you access the trailhead from the parking lot, even though you're in the Willows proper, you can still use the parking lot that's there. So even though Skunk Hollow technically doesn't start until you get further into the trails, we still allow and authorize folks to park there. It's just when they start to permeate through the mansion area and the rest of the park where they're within the Willows Park, and they should not have their dogs, let alone have their dogs off leash. So I just want to make sure that that is definitely an area of clarification in terms of access. I know we want to continue to evaluate and hear from folks. I think that's really important. I reached a point where I finally have sifted through all the emails that I received prior to the last meeting. It was definitely a lot. It was arguably more than I've ever received on any other topic, and I had a lot of opportunity to meet and engage with folks, as well as respond. So I know folks are eager to hear where this subject goes, and how the conversation and the dialogue continues. So I believe that if we could, maybe reestablish another designated meeting, it's probably important to do that, just so we make sure we are hearing from everyone, and make sure that we have signage at the trail, again, to a form of whatever that meeting date is. If there's more specifics that are going to be discussed that night, that those are divulged, so that there is a game plan, even maybe put out a timeline for discussion.
Yeah.
I definitely would like to see this board become in sync with the Board of Health, so we understand where they are and where they're going, and whether or not any of their decision-making might impact parks. I think to maybe establish a relationship with one of the board members, with one of our board members, would be a good idea, just so we kind of know what one another's doing. I think that's really important. And again, just like I said, continue to hear from folks. I think that's important. It's been quiet since the last meeting, but I just want to continue to invite people to send feedback, engage, and if they have suggestions and ideas, put those forth. I know, we have the meeting video. If there are members of our board that didn't attend the night of that meeting, make sure that they go back and look at it, so they could hear some of the feedback and whatnot. I know it's a very long meeting, but definitely worth the time. And a lot of great suggestions and ideas were given, so I think putting together a list of those, an outline, and start to think about what could be implemented, what some of the ideas are, and what some of the changes might be, if there are changes.
Yeah, and one thing, again, I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at it, on the one chart I had about how dogs are regulated in parks in Radnor now, it was sort of a matrix, and it had a lot of ideas on how parks or dogs in parks could be regulated if we wanted to. It kind of broke it down into, well, you could do this, you could do that, you could do this, you could sort of do this halfway measure, you could do this compromise. So, again, just to get people thinking about, well, what are some possible ways to deal with the problem? So, and one thing I wanted to clarify too, Tammy, I know there's some confusion about the boundaries between what's Skunk Hollow and what's the Willows, and I always say if it's grass, it's the Willows, if it's trees, it's Skunk Hollow. But it's important, even if people are using that upper parking lot, which of course they do, to access the Skunk Hollow Trail, where you, at this point, can have your dogs. You can have them one, and you can have them off leash. That there's still issues with people in that parking lot, either the coming and going, the traffic. There are little kids running around, but also there were events and things at the Willows Mansion now. So I think that it's probably important that we have some sort of regulation or some sort of limitation on the freedom of dogs to just sort of run at large through the parking lot where there's in and out cars and traffic and in that area there. So I just sort of want to clarify that. I think that area is still a concern, at least as far as dogs not on leash would be. Not dogs being there present, but dogs not being on leash, to protect the people in the parking lot and the people who are going to weddings and programs and whatever else that's going on at the Willows Mansion. Did I say that clearly?
One suggestion might be is to maybe just put an etiquette list together. And now that I have, about 100 people on an e-blast list, we could share that with them and just politely ask them to maybe kind of follow some of these etiquette pieces. One suggestion might be is to keep your dog on the leash until you get to the trail.
Till you get to the trail.
Just to avoid, an accident. Obviously, no one wants to have their dog backed over,
Right.
by a vehicle. I know I'm
Right.
in and out of that lot a lot, and it's
Yeah.
sometimes hard. And if you don't have a backup camera, especially, because you don't really see
Well,
what's
you're not
going
gonna see
on.
the dog
So
behind you, yeah.
that's just one suggestion that I would make is if there's, there's our basic etiquette, right? That's transferred across all the parks. We want to make sure folks are cleaning up after their dogs. Obviously they're under control, and we try to put a little definition to that. But maybe there's an etiquette about the Willows that we can try and do, because I know there are a significant amount of events that are coming up where the lot is probably pretty full.
Right. I mean, and other activities just in the park, in the park at large, where people aren't just parking down by the picnic tables, they're parking in the upper lot, even though the activity is down by the pond or whatever, just because of the parking situation there. So, okay, I just wanted to sort of add that point in. I'm sorry, go ahead,
You
Howard.
know that far parking lot as you're going into it, and I guess the parking lot you guys are talking about, has there ever been any thought, because there's a lot of that grass back there?
Yeah.
Is there, the fence that's sort of like a mesh fence that's over at Arterisio, to sort of like allow the dogs to run free in there?
So you mean that grassy area that I think
Yeah.
used to be an orchard or something? I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah, I was thinking.
We do, I mean, the point is, we do need to clarify what's the Willows and what's Skunk Hollow, and what
Exactly,
rules
yeah.
apply to what
Yeah,
areas.
'Cause
Because
I'm-
theoretically, if it's the Willows, there aren't supposed to be any dogs there, but you can't get to the Skunk Hollow trails without crossing through the Willows
Willows,
with
yeah.
your dog. So we have to figure,
Yeah,
that's Timmy's point, we
logistics.
have to clarify that for people.
okay.
And maybe, I don't, maybe there is some sort of fencing area or something, or maybe you cut off, I don't know, but these are all things that need to be thought about, because that is a little bit of a complication, like how do I get my dog there? So, okay. Anything else on that?
Just one idea too. I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not trying to create more meetings and more work for the Parks Board, of course. I know you guys have enough
We
on
love
your
being
plate
here.
these days. But, I mean, maybe there's a meeting there even we could have, or there's the establishment of a small group that, could go out in the field and take a look at it and come up with some ideas as well,
Right.
just as part of this.
Right, yeah. That's just a wrinkle on the whole issue, but it's kind of a tricky one, because people are very confused about the boundaries. Okay, so is that it for the dog issue for this meeting? Okay. Anki Ball Field, lighting proposal, update.
The project has been completed, and the lights might even be on when we leave tonight. I actually want to drive down and take a look,
Ooh.
so, because you can't really tell until you're down there, because the spillage is so light. But, so the project, it has concluded, and everything is complete and has been finalized. There's a couple just small punch list items, but a very exciting project. I want to just thank Radnor Wayne Little League for all of their leadership and funding and all that went into it on their end. I know those guys are volunteer and, put a lot of time, efforts, and energy, as well as everyone within Radnor Wayne Little League, which is currently up and running.
That's great news. I hope it is lit. That would be cool to see. Parks and Rec Board member, Park Steward Program, that's where we report on the parks that we board members are stewards for. Anybody have any issues that they want to report? The only thing I want to report, and Tammy, I think you already know about that, is there are discussions informally going on among myself, Radnor Conservancy, Boy Scouts, about dealing with that area in Skunk Hollow by the steps where the Boy Scout just recently put in those wooden steps that's very eroded, and what to do about it, and maybe revegetating that, in addition to possibly building another trail to let that particular trail, the first trail, the eroded area, kind of recover. But I think I've sent emails back and forth with you that, there's just discussions going on about, gee, what can we do? But we'll make sure I'll make sure everybody's coordinating with the township on that.
Well, I've actually had meetings on site about that already.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually met with Bob Mikolas and Eric Jansen on site, and we came up with a plan.
Excellent.
So it's not something that's going to get started right away. I think just due to vacation schedules and things like that that folks have, they're looking at starting that a little bit later, like
Yeah.
maybe in July or
Yeah.
more towards the spring, or the fall rather. But we met on site actually along with Steve Ledgerton as well and Rick Foster, and we looked at a wildlife trail that cuts off of there that would probably make the alternative for the time being until, well, obviously it's going to take time to get that established. And then the trail now where it's eroded will be closed off.
Right.
So we talked a little bit of about a game plan on what that would look like. And then obviously the rehabilitation and the
Revegetation of it,
vegetative part of that would be something where certainly the Conservancy would come in and looking at the scouts potentially to
Yeah, it's a
get
good project
involved.
for some group.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I know it's something that we talked about engaging volunteers on, like adult volunteers. We also discussed potentially getting some of the dog owners involved, since we know they hike a lot in the trails, to see if they might want to take part in some of the work. But it is something that we're going to be starting shortly with a game plan.
Yep, that sounds good. Yeah, lots of talk about that. Nothing else on that? Okay, public participation? You guys just here for the fun of it?
Yeah, just here to listen.
Oh, okay.
Didn't plenty of talking last time.
Well then, actually, we don't have a quorum, so I don't know that we can officially adjourn, but
Let's not let Robert's rules get in the way of it.
let's not,
so.
that's right, of
Motion to
going home.
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second, all in favor, aye. Okay, we're done. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, audience.
I guess I'll see you guys in June.
I can actually call, I might do it. I don't even have my, I've got like a little extra weight for like.
You're welcome. Thanks for sticking it out.
Yeah, sure.
So seriously, who